Zara stared at the message on her phone. A warm, overly enthusiastic invitation to what was described as a small family gathering at her parents' house that weekend. The wording was strange, like someone had copy-pasted it into a group chat. She hadn't been consulted. No one had called. And curiously, it came only days after she received a substantial $12,800 bonus at work, a bonus she had quietly celebrated with takeout and a movie alone in her apartment. She stared at the message again. No mention of her bonus. No congratulations. Not even a check-in. Just an invite, thrown casually like a bone. Zara knew the pattern. Ever since they were children, Emily, the youngest, had been the apple of everyone's eye. Zara was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who got straight A's and never complained when things weren't fair. Emily, on the other hand, got her own way. Every time, whether it was ballet classes at age 6, a car at 16, or skipping college only to be gifted a boutique to chase her dreams, Emily had been handed things Zara fought tooth and nail for. Still, Zara had tried to be graceful. She went to college, got a scholarship, built a quiet but strong career in finance. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. But as she read and reread the invite, something inside her tightened. She sensed something was off. Maybe it was the tone. Maybe it was the way no one followed up personally. Maybe it was just that she had learned, over years of silent disappointment, that in her family, kindness from them often came with conditions. She picked up the phone, hovered over the no thanks reply, then stopped. She decided to go, not because she wanted to see anyone, not because she was ready to forgive the past, but because she needed to know, deep down, if her instincts were right. If they had, once again, used her without so much as the courtesy of a warning. She chose her outfit calmly. Nothing fancy, nothing too humble, just enough to blend in and keep her dignity intact. What Zara didn't know was that this evening would be the last time she ever showed up out of obligation. This wasn't just a dinner. It was a moment she would finally outgrow their control and quietly take everything back. Zara pulled up to the familiar driveway, already lined with parked cars. Her stomach dropped. For a small family dinner, this looked like a full-blown event. The street was buzzing with activity, strangers greeting each other in front of the house, kids chasing balloons, and the sound of clinking glasses filtering out through the open front door. She stepped out of her car slowly, smoothing down the front of her blouse, each step forward weighed down by a growing sense of dread. The moment she crossed the threshold, her eyes widened. Streamers hung from the ceiling. A catering staff in uniform passed by carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres. A live-string trio played softly in one corner, and right above the dining room archway, a glittering banner read in oversized gold letters, "Welcome, Baby Emily." Baby Emily? The same Emily who was now 28 years old and had recently announced her pregnancy. Zara's eyes darted around the room. People she didn't recognize mingling with family members she barely spoke to. Laughter and toasts echoed through the living room, and all of it had one clear theme, Emily. Her mother appeared suddenly, wine glass in hand, grinning ear to ear. "You made it," she beamed, wrapping Zara in a brief, perfunctory hug. "Isn't it lovely? We really wanted to make it special for Emily and the baby." Zara's gaze lifted again to the banner. Special was an understatement. Then came the sentence that hit like a slap across the face. Her mother, waving her glass, called out over the chatter, "We used your bonus to make memories." The words hung in the air, followed by laughter from a nearby group, an uncle, an aunt, a cousin or two. They laughed like it was a charming anecdote, like Zara should feel proud. But all she felt was cold. She blinked, trying to process the sting. They had used her bonus, the reward of her long nights, endless spreadsheets, missed weekends. Gone, poured into a party she hadn't approved, hadn't known about, and certainly hadn't been honored at. The humiliation crawled under her skin. They didn't see her. Not really. She wasn't the celebrated one. She wasn't the one people raised glasses to. She was the silent provider, the background figure who worked, earned, and was then expected to smile while others took the credit and the cash. Zara smiled faintly, almost mechanically. "Of course," she said, her voice even. Inside, though, something had cracked. Not just the betrayal of money misused, but the deeper betrayal of never being seen, never being valued. They had thrown a party, but they'd also lit a spark. And by the time the last glass was raised, Zara had already decided this would be the last laugh they'd have at her expense. Zara stood near the back wall of the living room, a glass of untouched sparkling juice in her hand. The party continued around her. Laughter, toasts, cheerful music. Everyone was beaming at Emily, who sat in a throne-like chair with one hand on her belly, opening pink-wrapped gifts with exaggerated delight. A few people tried making small talk with Zara, but it was the polite kind, surface-level, almost absent-minded. No one asked how she was doing. No one asked what she'd been up to. Not a single word about her recent promotion or the sleepless nights she'd pushed through to earn her bonus. When her mother made another round near the punch table, she caught Zara's eye. "You see, Zara, everyone's happy. It was worth it, right?" she said lightly, as though the money had simply appeared out of thin air. Zara tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. Then she smiled, small, still, and just a little too calm. "Understood," she said. Her mother blinked, thrown off by the reply. "What's that, Day?" Zara held her gaze a moment longer. "I said, understood." Then she turned away. It was a simple word, but something in her tone chilled the air. A few cousins nearby exchanged glances. An uncle stopped mid-sentence and looked after her as she moved through the crowd, slow and composed. Zara didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She didn't even look upset. And that, somehow, was more unsettling than if she had screamed. She wandered out to the porch briefly, needing space. Her mind wasn't on the party anymore. It was traveling back through years of birthdays where Emily got the bigger gifts, the louder praise, the fonder words. School awards Zara worked hard for were met with, well, Emily's always been more artistic. Every achievement she earned was muted. Every mistake she made was magnified. And yet, she was the one who stayed responsible, who helped pay the bills during the pandemic, who never asked for anything in return. But tonight, they had used her, and then laughed about it. She stayed a little longer, long enough to watch the cake cutting from a distance. Then, quietly, while no one was looking, she left. No hugs, no farewells, no final smiles. She walked out the door, keys in hand, heart quiet. The drive home was long and still. She didn't play music. She didn't cry. Her hands remained steady on the steering wheel. A strange sense of clarity began settling into her bones. They thought she would brush it off like always. They thought her silence meant surrender. But this time, it meant calculation. By the time she reached her apartment, Zara already knew what came next. And it wouldn't involve forgiveness. Back in her apartment, Zara kicked off her shoes and sat at a desk without turning on the lights. The soft blue glow of her laptop screen lit up the dark room as she powered it on. Outside, the city hummed with nightlife. But inside her studio, it was pin-drop silent, the kind of silence that sharpened focus and dulled emotion. She wasn't sad. She wasn't angry. She was methodical. This wasn't the first time they'd taken advantage, but it would be the last. She opened her secure finance dashboard, entering a series of encrypted passwords only she could recall. The shared family account, one that her parents had convinced her to contribute to years ago, was still active. "It's just for emergencies," they had said, "to help each other when things are tough." Zara had never touched it for herself. But somehow, over the years, thousands of dollars had been withdrawn without her permission, and she had let it slide. This time, though, they'd crossed a line. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, opening transaction histories, filtering by date. There it was. 15 transactions made in the last 3 weeks, every one of them tied directly to the celebration she had just walked out of. $1,200, event hall deposit. $3,500, catering services. $950, balloon and party decor rental. $780, custom cake and dessert trays. $400, entertainment, live string trio. $275, personalized banners and signage. And it continued. The total? $12,800, down to the last cent of her bonus. Zara sat back and exhaled slowly, as if confirming what she already knew. Each transaction had been approved using the family joint account, but only accessible through the authorization code linked to her mother's device and the funds she'd added. They hadn't even tried to hide it. No request, no heads up, no shame. She opened a new document and began exporting the transaction logs. Screenshots, PDFs, statement backups. Every receipt had a digital fingerprint, and she collected them all like evidence in a courtroom. Each click steadied her resolve. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about boundaries, the ones they'd never respected. By the time the clock struck midnight, she had finished her audit. She sat in stillness, rereading each line. The names, the vendors, the account numbers. She wasn't going to scream or demand apologies. She wasn't going to beg to be seen. She was going to reclaim what was hers. Zara initiated the first wave, reversing transactions legally allowed under an authorized family fund misuse. She marked the account for fraud review and flagged her own contributions as non-consensual expenses. She moved her remaining savings to a new private account under her name only. Then she froze the joint account. As her cursor hovered over the final confirmation button, she whispered aloud, just once, not with anger, but with finality. No more. Click. The funds were locked. The party was over. And by morning, they'd know. Zara had done the math. Zara's fingers moved like clockwork across the keyboard, calm and unshaken. This wasn't emotion, it was execution. The same analytical precision she used to audit multimillion-dollar corporate portfolios was now being turned toward the people who had treated her finances like a family piggy bank. One by one, she reopened the 15 flagged transactions and began the reversal process. Because they had used her share of the funds without prior consent, she had every legal right to dispute the charges. The family account may have been shared, but her portion had never been surrendered. She had documented her deposits, marked her contributions, and had every digital record neatly stored. Vendor by vendor, she submitted refund requests. Some required short forms, others required verification of unauthorized use. She included detailed attachments, timestamps, account numbers, comparison of access history, all cold, all clinical. Her tone in the dispute claims was calm but firm. Funds withdrawn without contributor knowledge. Requesting reversal as per Financial Code 20-343. Every word chosen carefully. Every sentence undeniable. Within the next hour, 6 reversals had already been approved. The rest were marked under internal review. It didn't matter. The outcome was inevitable. She didn't stop there. Zara moved to the second shared account, an emergency savings pot created during the pandemic, one she'd contributed to significantly. She used it only once, when her heater had broken in winter. But since then, her parents had quietly dipped into it for Emily's boutique launch, for unexpected bills, for things they never mentioned. With a few keystrokes, she froze that account too. Not deleted, not drained, just locked. The funds would remain inaccessible until all contributors mutually signed off. And Zara had no plans to lift a finger. Next came the cleanup. She created a brand new solo account, one not linked to any family address or recovery email. Transferred her share, every last cent, into it. Labeled folders, personal growth, business launch, emergency only. It wasn't just a financial move. It was symbolic. She was done funding their fantasies. Before logging off, she created a document. One file, one page. It read, unauthorized usage corrected. Funds accessed without consent have been returned to rightful owner. Transaction references, number 001 through number 015. No further action necessary. She uploaded it to the Family Cloud folder titled Shared Planning, where they usually posted grocery lists and utility bills. No comments, no warning, just a digital receipt of quiet closure. As the clock neared 3 a.m., Zara finally leaned back in her chair. Her apartment was still dark, lit only by the fading glow of the screen. She wasn't angry. She wasn't vindictive. She was finished. They had used her without permission. Now they would face the result, silent, irreversible, and fully traceable. She closed her laptop, stood up, and finally allowed herself a deep, quiet breath. Tomorrow, they'd wake up confused. But she'd sleep just fine. At exactly 7:12 a.m., the first tremor hit the family group chat. Dad, man hashtag. Why isn't the utility payment going through? Zara, can you check? Zara, already awake and sipping her coffee on the balcony, saw the message flash across her lock screen. She didn't reply. She didn't even open it. By 7:28 a.m., the panic had escalated. Mom, medium skin tone nail Polish hand. I'm locked out of the account. Says it's frozen. Zara. Uncle Bayo. My catering deposit bounced. What's going on? Emily, medium skin tone baby. Wait, did someone mess with the baby fund? Mom? Zara scrolled through the flurry of messages with the same detached expression she used while reviewing spreadsheets at work. Her thumb hovered over the screen. Still, no reply. Then came the inevitable call. Her father's name flashed across her screen. She let it ring. Once, twice, 5 times. Then sent it to voicemail. He called again. Then again. Finally, a text. Dad, man hashtag. If this is your doing, it's childish and cruel. Fix it before things go too far. Zara smiled faintly. The same man who once told her, you shouldn't be so emotional, now wanted her to clean up their mess. At 8:02 a.m., another notification came through. A private message this time. Samuel, Emily's husband. Wow, you're really that petty? You ruined what was supposed to be a joyful moment. Over money? Grow up. He followed it with a screenshot of the bounced decorator payment and a snide line. Hope it was worth it. You embarrassed the whole family. Zara read the messages slowly, then clicked block. She went to the group chat, clicked mute notifications, then opened the individual chats with her parents and did the same. She wasn't going to explain herself. Not to people who didn't ask before taking. Not to people who weaponized guilt the moment consequences arrived. She had spent years trying to be gracious, trying to be the quiet one who didn't make waves. This wasn't a wave. It was a dam breaking. They had spent her hard-earned bonus on parties and pink banners. They had laughed when they admitted it, as if she should be on it. Now they were flailing in confusion, trying to assign blame. But she owed them no comfort. The day moved on. By 9:30 a.m., relatives were calling each other, trying to piece it all together. Messages flew like wildfire. Accusations, finger-pointing, apologies disguised as questions. Zara placed her phone face down on the table and turned her attention to her open laptop. A new project awaited, a proposal for a freelance client who'd found her through LinkedIn. The kind of opportunity that came from being focused, not distracted by family drama. The phone buzzed a few more times. She didn't look back. This was the dawn of consequences, and she wasn't watching the sunrise for anyone but herself. At exactly 11:07 a.m., the receptionist at Zara's fame buzzed her desk. Hi, Zara. There's a couple here to see you. They say they're your parents. Should I let them up? Zara paused for a moment, closing the spreadsheet on her screen. She already knew this was coming. Please ask them to wait. I'll come down, she replied, her voice composed. She slipped on her blazer and walked to the elevator, head held high, heart steady. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't angry. She was ready. When the elevator doors opened, she found her mother pacing by the potted plant and her father speaking to the receptionist, visibly frustrated. Zara, her mother snapped, rushing over. What is going on? Why are the accounts frozen? Why are payments bouncing? This is outrageous. Let's not do this here, Zara said quietly. Come with me. She led them to a nearby glass-walled conference room. It was sleek, quiet, and brightly lit, a space where words carried weight. She gestured for them to sit, then shut the door behind her. Without ceremony, she opened her work laptop and turned it around for them to see. I'd like to show you something. Click. A spreadsheet appeared, organized with color-coded rows, labeled Event Hall, Catering, Decorations, Cake, Entertainment. She scrolled slowly. These are the 15 transactions made using the shared family account, totaling exactly $12,800, the amount of my work bonus, which I contributed in good faith. Not one expense was discussed with me. Not one message. Not one call. Her parents exchanged a glance, visibly shrinking. Zara continued, tone even but sharp. Had you asked, I might have helped. I might have even celebrated with you. But you didn't ask. You assumed. You took. And you laughed about it. Publicly. Her father started to speak. Zara, that account was meant for. No, she said, cutting him off gently. That account was meant for emergencies. This wasn't an emergency. It was a choice. A party. And you made that choice without me. Her mother looked stunned, jaw slightly open, eyes darting to the open laptop. Why didn't you just talk to us before freezing everything? She asked, a note of desperation in her voice. Zara met her eyes. Because talking never worked before. This was the only language you all seemed to understand. Access and accountability. A knock on the door. The building's polite security officer stepped in. Everything all right here, Ms. Zara? Zara nodded calmly. Yes, I believe we're done here. Her parents stood in silence, unsure of what to say. For the first time, Zara saw uncertainty in their faces, not entitlement, not irritation, but true disbelief. She didn't flinch. She didn't soften. Security stepped forward. If you'll follow me, please. Her mother looked back once, as if waiting for Zara to change her mind. Zara didn't. She turned her laptop back around and reopened her work file. Behind the glass walls, her parents disappeared down the hallway, escorted without protest. Zara exhaled slowly and returned to her keyboard. This time, she had spoken their language, and finally, they heard her. By the weekend, the whispers had turned into full-blown speculation. Extended relatives began calling one another, exchanging pieces of a puzzle they didn't fully understand. Why was the family account frozen? Why had payments to the decorator, the baker, and even the photographer all failed within the same day? And the bigger question, why had Zara done it? One aunt sent a carefully worded text. Sweetheart, we're just concerned. Wasn't that account for everyone's benefit? Another cousin messaged with false sympathy. We know things haven't always been fair. But did it have to be so public? Zara didn't respond to any of them. Instead, she opened her Instagram and made a single post. Not dramatic, not angry, just direct. A clean white background. Bold black text. Not a single cent was offered back. Only blame. 15 transactions. $12,800. Zero permission. Zero apologies. Beneath the text, she attached 3 screenshots. One showing the transactions in question, another of her bank summary pre-party, and a third of the group chat, where her mother had proudly declared they'd used her bonus to make memories. She didn't tag anyone. She didn't write a caption. She simply posted and walked away from her phone. Within an hour, messages began pouring in, but this time, not from family. Her co-workers commented with fire emojis, and this is how you set boundaries. An old college professor shared it with the caption, "We teach women to be silent about being exploited. This is the new standard." A blogger with a modest following reposted it to her audience, writing, "Quiet power is still power. This is dignity in action. Quiet power is still power. This is dignity in action." It didn't go fully viral, but it caught enough attention. A quiet ripple across the feeds of working professionals, women in finance, daughters who had given too much, and people who had spent years being used for their silence. Her LinkedIn inbox lit up. A HR director messaged, "We saw your story. Ever consider consulting?" A brand manager wrote, "That level of composure. We'd love to collaborate on our leadership podcast." Zara read each message slowly, surprised by how many people understood the deepest story, not about money, but about respect. Meanwhile, back in the family circles, tension brewed. Her father fumed about public embarrassment. Her mother insisted it was just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Emily sobbed to friends, framing herself as the victim of her sister's coldness. But no one could deny the receipts. Zara had said little and proven everything. She didn't gloat. She didn't retaliate. She simply stood her ground. And in a world that often rewarded noise, Zara's silence had finally echoed louder than their noise ever could. 2 weeks later, Zara stood in her new apartment, a sun-drenched corner unit on the 11th floor, with tall windows and a view of the skyline that shimmered in the late afternoon light. There were still boxes stacked in corners, unopened and patiently waiting. But the space felt different, lighter, calmer. The echoes of her old life, shared accounts, heavy silences, cold family dinners, were nowhere in these walls. She had officially cut every financial tie. No more joint funds. No more family access to her accounts. No more explanations. Every dime she earned now flowed into three places: savings, her own peace, and a quiet little dream she had shelved for years: her consultancy firm. It started simply: a name, a domain, a minimalist website. ZA Consulting, clarity with integrity. She used her evenings to build her brand. Within weeks, thanks to the attention from her earlier post, she had 3 small clients, 2 startups and a women-led nonprofit. Each paid modestly, but the pride it brought was something her old salary could never offer. She wasn't working for applause anymore. She was building something that answered only to her. The silence she once feared now became her sanctuary. Mornings were spent with a warm cup of tea, journaling near the window. Weekends brought visits to independent bookstores and meetups with a small but growing circle of friends, people who didn't know her as Emily's sister or the quiet one, but simply as Zara. They listened when she spoke, laughed at her dry humor, asked about her day with sincerity. One afternoon, an email appeared in her inbox. It was from Aunt Florence, her father's oldest sister, the one who always wore bold colors and said too much at dinner parties. Subject: if you'll let me say this. Zara, I watched everything unfold from afar, and I want you to know, I'm sorry. Not for what I did directly, but for what I didn't say when I should have. I knew they leaned too hard on you. I knew it wasn't fair. I stayed quiet. That was wrong. You didn't go too far. You went far enough. If you ever want tea, I'd be on it. With care, Aunt Florence. Zara read it twice. Then again, she smiled, softly. It wasn't an open door, but it was a gentle knock. She replied simply, "Thank you for seeing me. That alone means a great deal. I'm not ready for tea yet, but I do appreciate your message." She hit send and closed her laptop. Zara wasn't chasing reconciliation. She was embracing clarity. Some relationships heal with time. Others serve as quiet reminders of who not to become. And some, like this chapter of her life, are meant to be packed away in boxes, left behind, but never forgotten. 1 year later, the scent of rosemary roasted vegetables and warm honeyed bread floated through Zara's apartment. Soft jazz played in the background, and the golden glow of pendant lights bathed the room in warmth. A long wooden dining table sat at the center, tastefully set for 12. No flashy centerpieces, just handmade place cards, linen napkins, and laughter bouncing off the walls. Her guests began arriving one by one. People who had walked into her life not because of shared blood, but shared values. A colleague who'd stood by her through the chaos. A friend from her co-working space who'd helped review her business proposal at midnight. A retired professor who now mentored her unofficially. Her favorite barista who had become a weekend hiking buddy. No one here saw her as a wallet. No one kept score. No one expected her to shrink so someone else could shine. Zara moved gracefully through the evening, refilling glasses, joining jokes, listening as her friends swapped stories. She hadn't planned speeches or performances, just presence. Real, nourishing presence. When dessert was served, a rich chocolate tart she'd baked herself, someone raised a glass and said, "To Zara, who taught us that silence doesn't always mean surrender." A ripple of smiles followed. Zara blushed, laughed, and finally stood. "I don't make speeches," she began with a grin, "but I'll say this: thank you all for showing me that joy doesn't have to be borrowed, or bought, or bargained for. It can be earned and shared." She held her glass a little higher. To earn joy, not borrowed obligation. The toast rang out in harmony. The glasses clinked. Someone played a softer track. Someone else pulled out a Polaroid to capture the moment. Zara sat back down, eyes roaming the table. The faces around her glowed with sincerity, not forced smiles or family politics. No one here was pretending. There was no Emily in sight. No false love wrapped in guilt. No one asking for a favor in exchange for affection. Just truth and peace. The evening slipped by in stories and quiet companionship. As the last guest trickled out, thanking her again and again for the warmth, Zara stood alone in her kitchen, barefoot and calm, sipping from her wine glass. Her eyes drifted to the empty dining table, now scattered with crumbs and half-finished teacups. And she whispered, to no one in particular, maybe to the past, maybe to herself. They turned my bonus into a banner. I turned their lesson into a legacy. And this time, the celebration had her name on it.